The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the emergency broadcast crackled through the speakers. Admiral of the Empire stood frozen, his 6 eyes widening as the translated human words echoed across the vast assembly hall. "We've got this." 3 simple words that would change everything the galaxy knew about the young species called humans. The crisis had begun 12 hours earlier when the ancient machines of destruction had awakened from their million-year slumber in the dead zone between galaxies. Their massive ships, each the size of a small moon, had already consumed 3 star systems. The energy readings were off every known scale. Entire civilizations had been reduced to cosmic dust in minutes. Captain Thera of the human exploration vessel Defiant had been conducting routine surveys near the outer rim when the first distress signals reached them. Her ship was small by galactic standards, barely a speck compared to the mighty dreadnoughts of the established empires. Most species would have immediately retreated to report the threat. Humans, as the galaxy was learning, were not most species. "Sir, we're receiving multiple distress calls from the Helix colony," reported Lieutenant from the communications station. "They are 3 hours out from their position." Captain studied the tactical display. Helix colony housed nearly 2 million beings from 17 different species. The nearest military fleet was 8 hours away. The math was simple and terrifying. "How many evacuation ships do they have?" she asked. 12 transport vessels, sir. They can maybe get 50,000 people out before the rest die," finished grimly. She looked around the bridge at her crew of 38 humans, young faces, most of them. The oldest was barely 40, against ancient machines that had terrorized the galaxy for eons. The smart play was obvious. Report the situation and hope someone with bigger guns could help. That's what every military manual in the galaxy would recommend. Instead, Captain activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We have a situation. Nearly 2 million innocent people are about to die, and we're the only ones close enough to help. I won't lie to you. The odds are not in our favor. These machines have destroyed civilizations that were building starships when Earth was still covered in ice." She paused, looking out at the stars through the viewport. "But here's the thing about humans. We don't calculate odds when people need help. We don't run when others are in danger. We don't abandon the innocent because the enemy is bigger than us. We see a problem and we solve it. So I'm asking for volunteers. Anyone who wants to transfer to an escape pod and head for safety, do it now. No judgment, but for those who stay." The bridge fell silent for a moment. Then Chief Engineer spoke up from the back. "Ma'am, with respect, where exactly would we go? You taught us that home isn't a place. It's standing with the people who need you when everything goes to hell." One by one, the crew voiced their agreement. Not a single person left their station. Captain smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. It was the smile humans wore when they decided something was about to change, regardless of what the universe thought about it. "Helm, set course for Helix Colony. Maximum velocity." "Sir," Lieutenant Parker said from the tactical station, "what's the plan? Our weapons can't even scratch those things." "The plan, Lieutenant, is that we're going to save those people. All of them, because that's what humans do." She opened a channel to Galactic Command. "This is Captain Thera of the Earth vessel Defiant. We're moving to assist Helix Colony. ETA 2 hours, 47 minutes. The response was immediate and frantic. "Defiant, this is Admiral of Command. You are ordered to withdraw immediately. Your vessel cannot engage this is not a suggestion." Captain looked at the image of the alien admiral on her screen. 6 eyes, blue-scaled skin, and an expression of what humans would call panic. "Admiral, with all due respect, you're not my commanding officer. We've got this." She cut the transmission before he could respond. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of preparation. The crew worked with the focused intensity that humans displayed when the impossible needed to become possible. Chief pushed the engines beyond their recommended limits. Dr. Martinez prepared the medical bay for massive casualties. The weapons team, led by Sergeant, began modifying their armaments with techniques that would have horrified safety inspectors, but made perfect sense to people who grew up reading stories about humans who refused to accept defeat. When they arrived at Helix Colony, the situation was worse than the reports indicated. The massive space station was in chaos. Alien families crowded the docking bays, desperately trying to board the few evacuation ships. The machines were visible in the distance, three massive geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. "Defiant, this is Colony Administrator," came a trembling voice over the communications. "Please tell me you have a battle fleet behind you." "Negative, Administrator, just us, but we're here to help. Begin emergency evacuation procedures. We'll buy you time." Time against those things. Your ship is barely 100th their size. Captain was already moving toward the bridge's tactical station, her fingers dancing across the controls. "Administrator, has anyone ever told you about what happened when humans first encountered the ocean?" What? No, I don't understand." "We were land creatures. Soft, slow, no natural weapons. The ocean was vast, dark, full of things that could kill us in seconds. Every logical analysis said we should stay away." The Defiant moved between the colony and the approaching vessels. "Instead, we built boats, then bigger boats, then ships that could cross entire oceans. We didn't conquer the sea by being stronger than it. We conquered it by refusing to let it stop us." The lead ship, a crystalline nightmare the size of a city, began charging its primary weapon. Energy readings spiked across every sensor in the system. "Today, space is our ocean, and those machines are about to learn what humans do when someone threatens our people." Lieutenant looked up from his console. "Captain, they're hailing us." "Put it through." The voice that emerged from the speakers was not mechanical. It was something far worse. Ancient, intelligent, and utterly without mercy. "Small CREATURES, you cannot comprehend what you face. Withdraw and we will grant you a swift ending." Captain stood up slowly. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of every human who had ever stared into the darkness and decided to light a candle. "This is Captain Thera of the human starship Defiant. You want those people, you're going to have to go through us." The silence that followed was broken only by the hum of the ship's engines. Then they began to laugh. It was a sound like stars dying. "Amusing, we have ENDEDCIVLIZETONS that span GALAXIES. What can one small vessel of PRIMITIVES possibly?" The transmission cut off as the Defiant opened fire. What happened next would be recorded in the archives of every major civilization in the galaxy. Not because it was the most devastating attack ever witnessed, but because it was the moment the universe learned that humans measured victory differently than everyone else. The Defiant's weapons, enhanced beyond all safety protocols, struck the lead ship. The ancient machine's shields flared but held, barely a scratch on its crystalline hull. But that wasn't the point. The point was that a human ship had just declared war on entities, that civilizations as gods of destruction. "All stations report," Captain ordered calmly. "Weapons functioning. No damage to target, but we got their attention. Engines at 120%. She'll hold. Structural integrity at, well, we're still here." Captain nodded. "Good, Phase 2. The Defiant accelerated directly toward the nearest vessel. Every alien watching the battle through long-range sensors assumed they were witnessing a suicide run. They were wrong. Humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of winning fights they shouldn't survive, and Captain had just remembered something important about the ancient machines. They had been asleep for 1,000,000 years, which meant they were operating on million-year-old assumptions about what constituted a threat. Target their sensor arrays, prepare the special packages. Special packages was human military terminology for things we invented 30 minutes ago that shouldn't work, but probably will because we're too stubborn to die quietly. The Defiant wove between the massive ships like a minnow swimming between whales. Its weapons, insignificant by any reasonable measure, began targeting specific points on the vessels. Not the heavily armored hull sections or primary systems, but the delicate sensor clusters and communication arrays. It was like attacking a tank with a sewing needle, except humans had always been very good at finding exactly where to stick the needle. The ancient machines, designed to fight massive fleet engagements, found themselves struggling to target a single small vessel that refused to behave predictably. Their weapons, devastating enough to crack planets, were too powerful and too slow to hit something moving with the erratic creativity of human desperation. Captain smiled as the Defiant completed another impossible maneuver around a weapon blast. You know what the problem is with being ancient and all-powerful, she said to her crew. You forget that sometimes the biggest threat comes in the smallest package. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in a million years, they had encountered something they didn't understand. A species that looked at impossible odds and said, "We've got this." And meant it. Dr. Martinez watched the tactical display from the medical bay, her hands steady as she prepared for casualties that logic said were inevitable. Around her, the Defiant shook from near misses as Captain continued her impossible dance around the vessels. "Medical to bridge," she called over the intercom. "How are we still alive?" "Because we're too angry to die," Kame's voice from engineering. "These machines think they can just show up and start killing innocent people. They picked the wrong species to intimidate." The chief engineer's words carried the particular edge that humans developed when someone threatened their pack. It was a tone that had made predators think twice since the dawn of time on Earth. On Helix Colony, Administrator watched in stunned silence as the tiny human vessel continued to evade destruction from weapons that should have vaporized it instantly. His people were still evacuating, but the process was going faster now. Hope, he realized, was a powerful motivator. "Get me a communication line to that human ship," he ordered. "Defiant, this is Administrator. Your actions are unprecedented, but you cannot win against 3 vessels. What is your strategy?" Captain's voice came back steady despite the ship bucking around her. "Our strategy, Administrator, is simple. We're going to do something these machines haven't seen before. We're going to refuse to lose." "I don't understand. That's not a strategy, that's being human," Lieutenant interrupted from his station. "Sir, I'm picking up something strange. The ships are trying to establish a communication link with each other, but their signals are getting interference." Captain's smile turned predatory. "From what?" "From our weapons fire, sir. We've damaged enough of their sensor arrays that they're having trouble coordinating their attacks." The revelation hit the bridge like lightning. They weren't individual ships. They were parts of a hive mind that relied on constant communication. Damage that communication network, and they became significantly less effective. "Transmit our findings to Galactic Command. Tell them exactly how we're disrupting their coordination." "Sir, shouldn't we keep this intelligence to ourselves? Military advantage and all." Captain looked at him with the expression humans wore when they were about to explain something fundamental about their species. "Lieutenant, we're not here to win glory for humanity. We're here to save lives. If sharing our discoveries means other ships can use these tactics, then that's what we do. Because the goal isn't for humans to be the heroes. The goal is for everyone to go home." She opened a channel to the galaxy. "This is Captain to all vessels in range. The ships operate as a networked intelligence. Target their sensor clusters and communication arrays. Small, fast ships are most effective. Repeat, target communications, not primary systems." Across the galaxy, military commanders of dozens of species listened in amazement as a human captain broadcast tactical intelligence that could save millions of lives, asking for nothing in return. On the flagship, Admiral stared at his communication officer. "Did she just share military secrets with everyone?" "Yes, sir, including potential enemies." The Admiral's scales shifted to a color that indicated deep confusion. In culture, military intelligence was guarded more carefully than royal bloodlines. Why would she do that? His tactical officer, who had spent time studying human behavior, provided the answer that would reshape galactic politics. "Because, sir, humans don't see other species as competitors when civilians are dying. They see them as allies who haven't been asked to help yet." Back on the Defiant, Chief's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, I've got an idea. It's completely insane, but it might work." "I'm listening, Chief." "These machines have been asleep for 1,000,000 years. Their programming is ancient. What if we give them something they're not programmed to handle?" "Such as?" "Chaos, sir. Pure, beautiful human chaos." Captain felt a familiar warmth in her chest. It was the feeling humans got when someone suggested doing something that was technically impossible, but felt absolutely right. "Explain." "We've been fighting them like they're ships. But they're not ships. They're machines, ancient machines with ancient programming, and you know what machines hate most? Unpredictability." Exactly, so instead of trying to outfight them, what if we outhuman them? The plan that followed would have been rejected by any sane military computer. It violated every principle of space combat developed over thousands of years. It relied entirely on the one thing humans brought to galactic civilization that no one else had: the absolute refusal to behave rationally when irrationality might save lives. "All hands," Captain announced. "Prepare for Operation Mongoose." Lieutenant Parker looked confused. "Sir, what's a mongoose?" "It's a small Earth animal that kills snakes by being too quick and too crazy for the snake strike patterns to work. Today, we're the mongoose." The Defiant suddenly changed tactics. Instead of the careful, defensive maneuvers they had been using, they began flying in patterns that made no tactical sense. Loops, spirals, figure eights that violated basic physics and several laws of common sense. But the machines, programmed to predict enemy movement based on logical combat patterns, found themselves unable to target a ship that wasn't following any pattern at all. Dr. Martinez held onto her medical equipment as the ship performed a maneuver that briefly had them flying upside down relative to the galactic plane. She called, "What exactly are we doing?" "We're being human, Doc. We're solving a problem by being too stubborn to accept that it can't be solved." The effect on them was immediate and profound. Their ancient intelligence, designed to counter every known form of military tactics, began to experience something like confusion. The human ship wasn't following any recognizable combat doctrine. It was simply doing whatever it wanted. On Helix Colony, the evacuation had reached 40% completion. Administrator watched as more ships arrived, responding to Captain's broadcast. Not all of them were human. A destroyer had just dropped out of hyperspace, followed by a wing of fighters. "This is Admiral to all vessels. We're implementing human tactical recommendations. Target communication arrays on the ships." For the first time in galactic history, multiple species were working together using tactics developed by the youngest member of the galactic community. And it was working. Though their coordination, degraded by dozens of ships targeting their communication systems, began to make mistakes, their massive weapons fired at targets that were no longer there. Their formations, perfect for millions of years, started to break down. Captain watched the tactical display as more ships arrived every minute. "Are you seeing this?" "Yes, sir, 43 vessels and counting. I'm reading ships from..." "Well, from everyone, sir. Even the hegemony sent a squadron." The hegemony and the Empire had been at war for 3 centuries, but both had sent ships to fight the using human tactics. "Captain," Dr. Martinez called from the medical bay, "we're receiving a transmission from one of the ships. It's different than before." "Put it through." The voice that emerged was still ancient and terrible, but now it carried something new: uncertainty. "Humans, you fight without logic, without pattern. We cannot predict your actions." Captain stood up slowly. When she spoke, her voice carried the collective experience of every human who had ever faced impossible odds and decided to keep fighting anyway. "That's because you're thinking about this wrong. You see chaos. We see creativity. You see unpredictability. We see adaptation. You've been asleep for 1,000,000 years, and in that time the galaxy grew something new. It grew humans. We have ANALYZD, your species. You are weak, slow, soft. You're right, individually we're not much. But we don't fight as individuals, we fight as family, and family doesn't let family down." She gestured to the tactical display, showing the growing fleet of Allied vessels. "Look around you. Every ship out there answered our call for help. Not because they had to, because they chose to, because that's what you do when someone needs help. You help." The ship was silent for a long moment. "This is not logical." Captain smiled. It was the same smile her ancestors had worn when they decided to build boats and sail into the unknown ocean. "Logic is overrated. What matters is that nearly 2 million innocent people are going home today, and you can't stop us." The ancient machine processed this statement for several seconds. "We do not understand your species." "That's okay. Most days we don't understand ourselves either. But we understand this. When someone is in trouble, you help. When someone is threatened, you stand with them. When evil says you cannot win, you say, 'Watch me.'" Around the Defiant, the Allied fleet had grown to over 70 ships, each one using human tactics. each one targeting the communication systems that kept the coordinated. For the first time in a million years, the ancient machines were losing a battle. And they were losing it to a species that had been spacefaring for less than 2 centuries. The implications would reshape everything the galaxy thought it knew about power, about war, and about what it meant to be truly dangerous. The evacuation of Helix Colony was entering its final phase when the impossible happened. The lead vessel, its communication systems crippled by the coordinated attack of nearly 100 ships, began to withdraw. Administrator could barely speak as he watched the massive machine slowly turn away from his station. Defiant they're retreating. Captain studied her tactical display with the careful attention humans gave to things that seemed too good to be true. Confirmed, all 3 vessels are pulling back but keep the evacuation going. This might not be over. She was right. The ship stopped their withdrawal at the edge of the system and hung there, silent and ominous. The assembled fleet maintained their positions, weapons ready, but no one fired. The cosmic standoff stretched for long minutes. Then the communication channels crackled to life. Humans. The voice from the lead ship was different now. Still ancient, still terrible, but carrying something that sounded almost like respect. We have existed for 47 million years. We have consumed 12,000 CIVILIZATIONS. All fell before US according to predictable PATTRNS. Captain exchanged glances with her crew. Whatever was coming next, she could feel it would change everything. But you defy prediction. You sacrifice yourselves for others without calculation of benefit. You share your advantages with former ENEMIES. You fight with METHODS that should not work yet do. Lieutenant whispered, are they actually analyzing us? We must understand. Why do you risk everything for beings who are not of your species? Captain considered the question. How do you explain humanity to an intelligence that measured existence in geological time scales? Because they asked for help, she said simply. This is insufficient reasoning. No, it isn't. Someone was in trouble, we could help, so we did. That's all the reasoning we need. The ship was silent for nearly a full minute. Your species has been space faring for 173 years. In that time, you have fought 7 wars with other species. All 7 wars were CONCLUDED with peace TRATIS, that BNEFITD your former ENEMIES more than yourselves. We fight to end fighting, not to win glory. You have shared technological advances with species who ENSLAVED your people. Because enslaved people weren't responsible for their government's actions. You have provided disaster relief to worlds whose leaders called for your destruction. Because natural disasters don't care about politics, and neither should relief efforts. The questions continued, each one revealing just how closely the ancient machines had studied human behavior during their short time in space. Every example highlighted the same pattern. Humans consistently chose cooperation over domination, aid over advantage, principle over profit. On the flagship, Admiral listened to the exchange with growing amazement. Tactical officer, how accurate are those assessments? Completely accurate, sir. Humans have never fought a war for territorial expansion, never enslaved another species, never refused aid to disaster victims regardless of political status. It's unprecedented in galactic history. The Admiral's scales shifted to deep blue, indicating profound thought. And we've been treating them as just another emerging power. Yes, sir, because we assumed they would eventually behave like us. Back on the Defiant, the interrogation was reaching its climax. We do not understand your MOTIVATIONS. Survival advantage is the primary drive of all known life, yet you consistently ACT against your own survival advantage. Captain felt a familiar warmth in her chest. It was the feeling humans got when they realized someone needed to learn what it meant to be part of a family. You're thinking about survival wrong. You see it as individual survival. We see it as species survival, community survival, family survival. Explain. A human who saves others even at cost to themselves isn't acting against survival advantage. They're ensuring that the values that make life worth living continue to exist. We don't survive as individuals. We survive as ideas, as principles, as hope. She gestured toward the tactical display, showing the mixed fleet of ships from dozens of species. Every ship out there represents those principles, and fighting side by side. Hegemony ships protecting Confederation colonies, ancient enemies working together because when someone says people are dying, the answer isn't "that's not our problem." The answer is, how can we help? Dr. Martinez's voice came over the intercom from the medical bay. Captain, I'm monitoring the communication frequencies. They aren't just talking to us, they're talking to each other. Their whole network is processing what we've told them. Chief added his own observation from engineering. Sir, their power signatures are changing, not powering down, but shifting somehow. The lead ship spoke again, and this time its voice carried something that 47 million years of existence had never taught it to express. Humans, we have reached a conclusion. Every ship in the system held its breath. For 47 million years, we have sought to eliminate chaos from the galaxy. We have DSTROYD species that deviated from logical behavioral PATTERNS. We BLIVED such deviation was a flaw to be CORRECTED. Captain felt her heart skip a beat. But you have shown us something we did not anticipate. Chaos that serves order. Illogic that ACHIEVES logical goals. Self-sacrifice that ENSURES survival. What are you saying? We are saying that after 47 million years of perfecting the galaxy, we were wrong. The words hit the assembled fleet like a shockwave. Ancient machines that had terrorized civilizations for eons were admitting error. Your species REPRESENTS something new, something we were not programmed to account FOR. BINGS who choose to be better than their programming. The ships began to change. Their dark, angular forms shifted, becoming less threatening. Still massive, still clearly powerful, but no longer radiating the aura of cosmic horror that had defined them. We withdraw our judgment of the galaxy. We will return to the void and consider what we have learned. Wait, Captain called out. You don't have to leave, you could stay. Help us build something better. We have spent 47 million years as DSTROIRS. We must learn to be something else before we can contribute to creation. The lead ship paused in its departure preparations. Humans, continue to be what you are. The galaxy has become more than we thought possible because of your influence. As the vessels began to fade into hyperspace, one final message reached the fleet. When you said, "We've got this," you did. In the silence that followed their departure, Captain looked around her bridge at the crew that had somehow convinced ancient gods of destruction to reconsider their purpose in the universe. "Status report," she said, because even after achieving the impossible, there was still work to do. "All evacuation ships have cleared the colony, sir," reported. 2,043,612 lives saved. "Structural integrity holding," added, "though I'm going to need about a month to explain to a safety inspector how we're still in one piece." "Medical bay ready for any casualties," Dr. Martinez called, "though apparently we won't be needing it." Captain opened a channel to the fleet. "This is Captain to all vessels. Thank you. Every one of you answered a call for help from strangers, and because of that, no one dies today. That's what makes this galaxy worth defending." Admiral's voice came over the communication system. "Captain, on behalf of the Empire, I formally request a meeting to discuss new approaches to galactic cooperation." Similar requests began pouring in from every major power in the sector. 6 months later, Captain stood before the Galactic Council as they formally established the Universal Aid Compact. Species that had been enemies had agreed to respond jointly to any crisis that threatened civilian populations. The agreement was known informally as the "We've Got This" doctrine. During the signing ceremony, Admiral approached Captain with a question that had been bothering him since the encounter. "Captain, may I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "When you first engaged those machines, did you actually have a plan? Or were you simply improvising?" Captain smiled the smile that humans wore when they were about to reveal a fundamental truth about their species. "Admiral, humans always have a plan. It might not be a good plan. It might not be a logical plan. It might be completely insane and rely entirely on luck and stubbornness. But we always have a plan." "And what was your plan that day?" "Simple, we were going to save those people. Everything else was just details. The Admiral's scales shifted to a color that indicated deep respect. And if you had failed, then we would have failed trying, because the worst thing that can happen to a human isn't dying. It's knowing we could have helped and chose not to. As Captain left the ceremony, she received a message on her personal communicator. The sender was listed as unknown, but the content made her smile. Captain VOSS, we have spent these MONTHS OBSRVING the changes your actions have brought to this galaxy. CIVLIZATONSRCOOPRATNG. Former ENMIS provide AID to each other. The chaos UINTRODUCD has become a new form of order. We WANTDU to know we are learning to build rather than destroy. Perhaps one day we will be worthy to help when someone says we've GOT this. The VOIDBORN. Captain looked up at the stars through the council chamber's viewport and whispered the words that had changed everything. We've got this. And they did.